Hello, my name is Sachin, and I'm a big SSG fan and a longtime subscriber. I have a question for you. What was the scariest thing you have ever seen in your life? Have you ever seen something so horrifying that it made you question everything you believed in? To be honest, I've never expected to be in this channel to tell you a story. And I know you may not all believe me. I don't even expect you to. But today, I will tell you the story of how a simple motorbike ride changed my life forever. It all happened one Thursday night. That night I was with Prashant, my friend, returning from a village road in Jagos through the Backpack district. Before we knew it, it had become really late, and when I looked at my mobile phone, I realized that it was already midnight. Prashant was driving the motorbike while I was in the back seat, filming as much as I could, as I wanted to test how my new mobile phone camera worked on the move. At first, the night was going pretty normal. Maybe a little chilly, but as the ride went on, I felt that something strange was happening. I didn't want to disturb Prashant while he was driving, but I started to feel very dizzy and nauseous. It was a terribly strange feeling. It wasn't like a normal dizziness. It was something I felt on my skin, in the air, as if the discomfort was coming from outside and not from inside. I started to get very cold, and I noticed that the road was getting foggy. At first, I started to see the bike going from one side to the other. I thought I had a fever and was hallucinating things. Instead, I noticed that the bike was moving, but the road was still in the same place. This was not a fever. Prashant was riding erratically. Hey Prashant, are you okay? Huh? The bike started going more and more erratically, almost going off the road. That's when I saw my friend's face. He was as confused as he was lost. Hey, the road! Suddenly, Prashant regained his coordination and straightened the bike. We were almost part of an accident. Bro, what happened?
Hey, I'm sorry. I suddenly got very dizzy and lost my bearings. I'm fine now.
What's up with the road? Was it foggy a few minutes ago?
No, it came out of nowhere. On top of that, it's freezing cold.
We both continued the journey, wondering what was going on. We were both still dizzy, so Prashant was afraid of losing control of the bike, and I was afraid of falling off it. We thought about stopping for a moment to regain our balance, but neither of us even suggested the idea. Maybe it's hard to understand, and it's one of those things that if you don't live it, there's no way to understand it. But we were both afraid. We both felt like if we stopped, something bad would happen. Suddenly, when we both started to feel a little better and thought it was all over, we heard something. It was a girl's voice. It was a girl's voice crying. My friend and I looked at each other's faces in confusion. Neither of us was happy with the idea of slowing down the bike, but at that moment, we didn't think of anything paranormal, ghost, or that this could be a trap. Our first thought was the most logical. A girl could be in the middle of the road injured. Maybe she had a traffic accident in the fog, or maybe something worse had happened to her. Despite our fear, we stopped and started trying to find the source of the sobbing. It was when we stopped that we realized how scary this place was. The road was completely dark. We couldn't see how the road went on or where we had come from. We could see absolutely nothing. As if that wasn't enough, we were also overcome by a new fear. Silence. Since the motorbike had been switched off, we could only hear the sound of the girl crying and some crickets. We started to get much more scared, and instead of fearing for the girl, we feared for our lives. The woman's sobs sounded stranger and stranger. At first, we couldn't identify where it was coming from, but suddenly, it was clearer than ever. The sobs were coming from the road, but something was wrong. They were not the sobs of a woman trapped in an accident or hiding in a corner. The noise was not only getting louder, it was moving. The sobs were coming to us. I didn't know what else to do but take out my camera, filming as much as I could, as if that would stop whoever was approaching us. My camera had a flash, and with it, we could see a little further, but still, we couldn't see anything close. The noise kept getting closer and closer. We could feel it getting closer. We could almost feel it next to us, but it still didn't reach the range of the camera. We couldn't see anything. Sachin, let's get out of here. Something is wrong. I don't like this.
Let's call the police. If something happened to the girl, they'll surely know what to do.
Yeah, let's go.
Wait. Stop! The engine!
What?
Pay attention!
The noise. It stopped. The woman stopped crying. We both stood at attention, trying to hear footsteps or the woman's sobs again, but they were gone. The place was flooded in absolute silence. Not even the crickets were still making noise.
Okay, time to go.
Prashant tried to start his bike, but suddenly he was terrified.
Sachin, in front of us!
As I turned around, even for a second, I could see and film what Prashant was showing me. It was a silhouette. A black shadow had passed quickly in front of us, and it was lost on the road. We were both completely terrified. We went into absolute panic. I shouted to Prashant to start the bike, and as soon as he started it, he accelerated as fast as he could. Then, in the middle of the road, we saw something else. It was a woman. At first, we thought she was lost. Maybe it was her crying, but something was terribly wrong. She was standing in the middle of the road wearing a dress. She was wearing a sari. Something was terribly wrong with her. I looked at her legs, and that's when it hit me. This woman wasn't standing on the ground. She was floating? That's when, even if it was only for a second, we could see her eyes. They were as if they were lost. No human could have those eyes. This woman wasn't human. She was something different. Prashant, who was seeing the same thing as me, turned the bike around and sped back the way we came. We didn't know where we were going, but we understood that we had to leave. We had to leave as soon as possible. Prashant accelerated as fast as he could. The dizziness returned and it became more and more difficult to get out of the area, but after a few seconds that felt like hours, we were out. Gradually, the fog began to disappear and all that darkness was gone. The temperature returned to normal and the dizziness disappeared completely. Anyway, Prashant didn't slow down for a moment until minutes later we could feel safe for the first time in the night. When it became daylight, we had to go back that way to our homes, but there was nothing left. The road was the same as the one we always took. Soon after, once I got home, I found out a bit more about what Prashant and I had experienced, and I must tell you that I was shocked. We were not the only ones who saw something we were not supposed to see. Over the years, that road in the Bagapot district witnessed many supernatural events. Once midnight comes, that place is rumored to be the meeting point for things out of this world. Things that neither I nor Prashant were supposed to have seen. But you know what the worst thing is? Despite everything we experienced, we were lucky. We found out that not everyone who enters the road comes out alive, and that's when we learned that 2 years before our trip, a newlywed couple was found dead. The woman had had the worst of it, as something, perhaps that shadow we saw, had torn her body to pieces and thrown her onto the road. From that moment on, not a day goes by that Prashant and I don't think that it could have been us.
I imagine that, like me, you all love horror stories. Whether it's through series, movies, or videos, we all consume horror in different ways. In my case, although many prefer traditional platforms like Netflix, I have a special fondness for YouTube. YouTube has an amazing amount of content created by independent filmmakers, documentaries, and short films that you won't find anywhere else. Often I dive into the darkest corners of the platform to discover hidden gems. While surfing the internet, I stumbled upon a curious YouTube channel that I'm sure you are familiar with, SSG Animations. I always watched their videos as soon as they were uploaded and always tried to comment first, even without having seen the video. I usually watched them alone, but whenever I could, I would watch the videos with Chris, my best friend. Chris was also a big fan of SSG. His dream had always been to star in a story on the channel, an ambition that seemed a little strange to me because to be on the channel, you had to have something terrible to tell. I considered myself to be a big fan of horror on YouTube, but I've always seen it from the outside. I never imagined that my love for this platform would put me in danger. I didn't think someone would use my love of horror to stalk me. A stranger's obsession with my daily life would trigger events that would change my world forever. It all started on a Tuesday morning. Since I work from home as a film critic, I have the freedom to arrange my schedule. I decided to get up early to watch a newly uploaded horror short film on YouTube that I was supposed to review. I was excited and ready to get started. At first, everything went smoothly. The short film wasn't much different from others I had seen before. Until suddenly, a message popped up on my computer, interrupting the video. "I'm watching you," it said. I thought it was a prank, some kind of virus. I know I was supposed to feel scared, but instead, I felt incredibly annoyed. Had I downloaded a virus without realizing it? Who could be so unprofessional as to send me a work file with a virus? I tried to close the message, but another one popped up immediately. "I know you are alone." My heart started to beat faster. Whoever sent that might be right, but that was easy enough to find out. Just in case, I disconnected the computer from the internet, thinking that would solve the problem. But my peace of mind was short-lived. Minutes later, my phone rang. It was a text message from an unknown number. Turning off the internet won't do you any good. I felt my blood run cold. How had he got my number? Who was this person? I decided to call Chris and tell him what had happened, but I got no answer. With fear growing inside me, I decided to check all the locks in my flat. I lived on a high floor and the doors were secured. There was no way anyone could get in, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Could they be watching me on the mobile phone camera? A webcam? Just in case, I turned everything off. The afternoon passed slowly. Every noise in the building made me nervous. The knocking on the neighbors' doors, the lift moving, and even the sound of footsteps in the hallway made me jump. I was both scared and furious. How could I let a small threat make me like this? As real as it seemed, everything told me I was overreacting. But a part of me felt that this was real, even though I couldn't explain why. I decided to lock myself in my room, lock the door, and try to calm down. Suddenly, the door to my room opened violently. I jumped towards the figure in the door with a knife in my hand, but stopped halfway. It was Chris.
"Amanda, what's going on? You weren't answering your phone, and I came to see you. I saw that your line wasn't working either, so I used the copy of the key you gave me. I'm sorry I scared you."
Desperate, I ran to him and hugged him, telling him everything. He took me to his flat and offered me shelter. He told me I could stay all night and he would even stay awake with me. At that moment, I felt some relief. The trouble was over, if only for that night.
Do you want to watch something on YouTube to distract you?
I don't know. I'm still scared.
Come on, it'll make you feel better. I already have something prepared for you.
I looked at the screen and there was a paused video. Relaxed by my friend's presence, I agreed. But as soon as the video started, confusion came over me. It wasn't just any video, but a recording of my flat. Someone had filmed while I was sleeping. What the hell?
Shh, this is the best part.
What's going on? Why are you filming? At that moment, I realized something was wrong. Was Chris the person who was stalking me? I was confused, looking at the video of me in his flat. I had nowhere to go. I was completely frozen with fear. As I watched the video, I could feel Chris's gaze on my side, watching him react with a huge smile on his face. Meanwhile, in my head, I was thinking about how to escape. As I watched that, I could see out of the corner of my eye Chris pulled a small knife out of his jacket. At that moment, I realized I had to act. I took a deep breath and counted to 3. As soon as I finished the count, I quickly stood up and threw the small table at Chris. I ran to the front door. and to my surprise, it was open. Chris was a complete rookie and impulsive. He hadn't even locked the door. I ran out of his flat and started banging on the neighbors' doors. As I ran, I shouted for help, hoping someone would open the door. Some neighbors poked their heads in, but when they saw the situation, they locked themselves in again. Others simply did not respond. Finally, I finished climbing through the flats and reached the terrace. There was no way down. It was 5 floors, and I wasn't going to survive the fall. Behind me, Chris had already caught up with me, laughing but furious. I looked at Chris, who was slowly approaching, enjoying every moment of my desperation.
You have nowhere to go, Amanda.
Chris, what the hell? Why are you doing this?
You were always asking me how I was going to star in my own horror story, remember? You'd tell me my idea was stupid. You'd laugh at it, and you'd say that there was no way you could make something terrible happen to me. You know, you were right. The only way to make things happen is to be the villain of the story.
You think this is worth it? I'm your best friend.
And that's why it's going to be more dramatic. I can't wait to be in the news, in the movies, books, YouTube channels. SSG will make a video about me.
I couldn't let this be the end. I grabbed a flower pot and threw it at his head, giving me time to run to one of the sinks on the terrace. I locked myself in and locked the door. The laundry room was tiny. I could barely fit through, and a grill separated me from the outside. On the other side, Chris was furiously trying to open the door and reach me, and I knew he would succeed. At our most intimidating moment, my shouting finally took effect. Neighbors started banging on the terrace door trying to open it. Others called the police. Chris, realizing that time was running out, started banging harder on my door.
Amanda, open the door. We have a few seconds. Open the door now.
But the neighbors were already on their way, and in a matter of seconds, they broke down the door and came in just as Chris was about to reach me. Together, they managed to restrain him until the police arrived. Chris was screaming in despair. He looked like a rabid animal. They could hardly stop him in the crowd. He didn't have eyes for anyone but me, but not in a good way. He wanted to tear me apart in the worst possible way. That day, the neighbors arrested a monster. Chris was arrested. The police found multiple recordings of me in his flat, enough evidence to convict him. I moved to another flat and took extra precautions for my safety. Despite the horror I experienced, I continued to watch SSG, but with a new perspective. All stories are interesting and entertaining until they happen to you. We always know what decision to make at the best time, until we have to make them. I never imagined that I would fulfill Chris's dream of starring in a story on the channel. But considering what I experienced, I would have preferred never to do it.
Andrew and Tristan are my best friends, and from a young age, we three have been doing things together. We are all avid outdoorsmen, and at least twice a year visit new unexplored places. However, many a time we experience unusual things that are not only terrifying, but also make us question how much we truly know about our world. Today, I will be sharing one of these experiences with you. And I kid you not, this was one of the scariest nights of my life. So, my buddy Andrew is a businessman, and he was overseas in Europe closing a business deal. A few days before his return, he called us. Hey guys, I know I was supposed to get back soon. However, I want you to join me here to explore the Alps. What are you talking about, Andrew? Tristan asked. I was equally as confused as Tristan. Mr. Griffin, my new business partner, has a small cottage in the Alps. He offered me to stay in it over the weekend and asked me to invite my friends and family if I wanted to. It looked like a cool place to camp and spend a weekend. I've sent pictures of the cottage on our WhatsApp. We checked our phones, and sure enough, a small, humble cottage was displayed on our screen. The place had a unique appeal about it, so we decided to go. That's how we planned one of the worst trips of our lives. Andrew picked us up from the airport and drove us to the cottage. We had to hike a few miles up the mountain to reach this cottage. Andrew mentioned on the way that the cottage had everything we needed. It was a big single room with no windows and a tall roof. One corner of the room was converted to a kitchen, and there was no toilet or a bathroom. There was a small freshwater lake behind the cottage where we could get water, and we had to carry food with us too. It was a picture-perfect location, and we were all excited to spend our weekend there. The first night was uneventful. We chatted and played cards till bedtime. Andrew fell asleep pretty soon, but Tristan and I were awake in our beds, chatting for a while longer, when suddenly Tristan became silent. Dude, did you hear that? What happened, Tristan? Heard what? Someone walked past our cottage. Tristan was still in his bed, and so was I. We stayed awake for a while to listen to anyone else passing by, but there was no sound from outside again that night. The next morning, we both concluded it might be an animal and dismissed the incident. Later, we went bird watching, and then around 5 in the evening started our campfire. It was so fun to get together with my buddies after so many months. We were laughing and enjoying the campfire until the sun set and we returned to the cottage. It must have been no later than 7 p.m. when we heard the footsteps again. This time, whoever it was kept on passing by our cottage several times. All 3 of us were on edge. However, what followed was so scary, weird, and unexplainable. Around 8 p.m., Tristan was thirsty, and we hadn't fetched water that day, so we had nothing to drink. The sounds of footsteps from outside continued. Nevertheless, Tristan and I decided to get water. Andrew was skeptical about our plan and decided to stay in. We reached the lake and started filling our bottles. We could hear multiple footsteps now. Something was really close to us. We tried to be alert and as quick as possible. As soon as we filled our bottles, we bolted for the cottage. Tristan was a few steps behind me. I looked back when a stone came flying from a nearby bush and hit him in the head. Tristan fell to the ground, the water bottle spilling from his arms. A giant, hairy hand appeared from the same bush and tried to pull him inside. I was shocked, but quickly dropped my bottles and got a hold of Tristan. A log suddenly hit the big hairy hand. Andrew stood right beside me with the log in hand. "Take Tristan inside. I will get the bottles." I somehow managed to drag Tristan's large, unconscious frame into the cottage. Andrew entered right after, locking the door and barricading it with the tea table. Not a minute later, a large branch was thrown on the roof of our cottage. A human couldn't do so. Plus, the hand I saw was definitely not a human one. It was followed by some rocks being thrown at our cottage from all directions. The noise was so loud, but still, we could hear multiple footsteps approaching. Looked like there were several of those hairy creatures. We knew we were under attack. The stones and the logs kept on banging on the walls of the cottage. Andrew and I were terrified and worried about what would happen if the cottage broke. Suddenly, a hole was punched in the wall beside the door, and a giant hairy hand came in trying to grab one of us. I and Andrew picked up our trekking poles and tried to beat and stab the hand. It quickly retreated. When we looked through the hole, a giant yellow eye was staring back at us. Using the sharp side of the same pole, I stabbed the eye and blood spilled everywhere. A horrified scream could be heard, and many footsteps started running everywhere. A few minutes later, there was a pin-drop silence outside. The creatures had returned to the forest, and we were safe. However, we did not step outside until sunrise. We made sure Tristan was okay and stayed up all night in case the hairy beast decided to show up again. We left the cottage and the country that day, returning home terrified and with lots of questions. After some research, I think they were Bigfoot or large mountain men. What do you think the creatures were? Keep watching to know about the next strange experience we had. In the fall of last year, I and my 2 friends Andrew and Tristan were back again hiking on a snowy mountain in Canada. By now, I guess it's rather clear that our trio loves the outdoors, especially the mountains. We'd rented a small cabin, and we planned to hike a few miles upwards, set up our tents for the night, get up in the morning, reach the peak of the mountain, and then get back to our rented cabin. But I must tell you, this was not just any cabin built in the woods. It was an old park ranger's cabin which was now being rented to hikers. The park ranger's cabin was built a few miles up the trail we were going to take. The day we reached the cabin, it was sunny. However, there was some snow from the previous snowfall. We were pretty tired, so we just cooked our food and got our gear ready for the hike the next day and slept. At around 5 a.m., I was woken up by Tristan. "Hey man, wake up! Look out! We're snowed in!" I woke up and, to my disappointment, we were snowed in. "This is horrible. We were supposed to start our hike today." "Yeah man, it sucks. But on the flip side, we can all just relax and talk. We have the supplies to last us for a couple of days anyways. Let's wait till the snowstorm stops." For the next 2 days, I and my friends were confined to the cabin, only going out to relieve ourselves and to collect water. On the evening of the second day, while Andrew was asleep, I and Tristan were playing cards when suddenly someone knocked on our door. It didn't seem like an animal had just bumped into the door, as it sounded like a proper knock. We were a bit skeptical about who could come out here while there was a raging snowstorm, but Tristan and I decided to open the door anyway, thinking it could be a park ranger checking in on us. But when we opened the wooden door, the sight that greeted us was horrific. A middle-aged man covered in snow, wearing a thin sweater and with hardly any tracking gear, literally fell on our cabin's porch. Reflexively, I and Tristan hauled him inside and made him sit near the fireplace. He wasn't able to say anything or even move much. Andrew had woken up due to the commotion and was now trying to talk to the person. Tristan heated our leftover soup and tried to cover the man with some warm blankets. Once he was settled and started to feel a bit oriented, we asked him what was the matter. "My name is Colin, and 2 days ago, I and my son Cole had started hiking the trail on this mountain. But soon the snowstorm started and we got lost. I and my son didn't carry a tent or a sleeping bag, as we didn't intend to complete the trek. We just wanted to reach the new ranger's cabin and turn around. We'd estimated it would take us half the day to complete it. However, the snowstorm started and we got lost in the woods with hardly any trekking equipment. We somehow managed to camp out for the first night, but soon the dehydration and lack of food took a toll on us, and my son fell ill. He couldn't walk, let alone search for a way out of the forest with me. So, when we thought we'd lost all hope in the snowy forest, we came across a yellow light. It resembled the headlight of a car, so we were so delighted that we had somehow made it to the road. I left Cole seated under a tree and ran towards the light as fast as I could. But as I went further, I couldn't spot the light anymore. And we weren't on a road. Rather, we were still very much stuck in the forest. That's when I spotted the smoke from your chimney and came here. My son is still sitting by the tree. We need to go get him." Immediately, all 4 of us were out of the cabin with our equipment. Tristan ran towards the new park ranger's cabin to get more help, while Andrew and I followed Colin to the spot where he left his son. We reached the tree about 20 minutes later, and all we could find was Cole's backpack. Colin was visibly shaken after not finding his son. He started yelling and calling out to him, but to no avail. Andrew and I started scouting the nearby area to see if Cole had walked somewhere, but due to the snowfall, we couldn't find any footprints, and it was tough for us to search the area alone. Soon, Tristan arrived with 5 park rangers who had already reported Cole missing and asked for backup. Although the snowstorm showed no sign of stopping, a huge search party had gathered to look for Cole. We all knew how crucial time was, as Colin had already claimed that Cole was in critical condition due to the weather. Some of the park rangers brought bloodhounds, and that's when the story took an unexpected turn. 100 meters away from the tree against which Cole sat was a cliff that went straight down. We could spot something down there, but due to the excessive snow, it wasn't clear. The bloodhounds kept on barking from the top, looking at the thing below the cliff. So, to investigate, a couple of park rangers went down, and to everyone's shock, the little thing was Cole's lifeless body, lying face down in the snow. However, Cole's body didn't have any injuries, which may have led to death if he had fallen off the cliff as was initially speculated. Cole had become so weak that he could barely move a few feet, so he couldn't have walked 100 meters towards the cliff. After the autopsy, the cause of death was being exposed to the elements for too long without any protection. However, some things about Cole's death didn't add up. Firstly, if he was so weak, how did he walk up to the cliff? Second, assuming he had fallen, why weren't there any injuries? To be honest, we've heard a lot of theories about Cole's death. Some say that the light was just to distract Colin away from Cole, so that a killer could kill Cole. Some say that it must be a suicide as he was already feeling miserable. Some say it was an animal attack, but his body had no injuries. Some go as far as accusing Colin of making up a fake story about lights and killing his son himself. But after seeing all the evidence, it's still not clear who or what killed Colin. His death was forever an unsolved mystery. So, let me know in the comments section what you think about the story of Cole's death. Was it a suicide or was it murder? Last summer, me, Andrew, and Tristan were off to Cape Town. We wanted to enjoy the beaches in South Africa, sunbathe, and spend some time together away from our professional life. We had an elaborate plan to spend 2 weeks in various towns in South Africa, but Cape Town was the highlight of our trip. The first week went smoothly as planned, but when we reached Cape Town, Tristan broke his ankle while playing beach ball and was immediately hospitalized. He was fine overall, but couldn't walk and had to be kept under observation for a few days. While he was being treated, he was admitted to a room with another patient, named Mike. Mike was a construction contractor, and while breaking drywall, he had fallen and injured his abdomen. The day Tristan was admitted to the hospital was the day Mike had undergone surgery. In the next 2 days, he was recovering pretty well, and so was Tristan. They had become good friends and watched sports on the common television together. Whenever we visited Tristan, we made sure to talk and interact with Mike as well. Mike was a well-liked guy and had a big family who brought food for not just him, but for Tristan as well. Let me tell you something about Mike. He had 3 incisions on his abdomen, which meant he was bedridden and couldn't get up or walk without anyone's help. A few more days passed and Tristan was finally discharged. We decided to take the flight back home on the same day. Our flight was late at night, so along with Tristan, we left the hospital and wished Mike good luck. Around 5:30 the same evening, Tristan received a call from the hospital. It was the woman at the front desk, and she was asking Tristan if he knew where Mike was. This was utterly confusing, as technically Mike was supposed to be in the hospital for a few more weeks. The woman informed Tristan that Mike was missing, and apparently, neither the hospital staff nor his family knew where Mike was. We were all terribly worried and decided to stop by the hospital on our way to the airport. When we arrived at the hospital, there were cops all around it, looking for Mike along with the hospital staff. When they noticed Tristan, the cops questioned him about Mike and if he had mentioned anything about leaving. Tristan confirmed that Mike had no intention of leaving. He had at least not mentioned anything. When we asked what had exactly happened, a nurse told us the whole story. So, every day around 5 p.m., the nurses are scheduled to change the bedding of the patients. A nurse called Carol was in charge of the ward in which Tristan and Mike were admitted. We knew her as she had come around every day around 5. When she came to Mike's room that day, he was alone and watching TV. She wished him good evening and told him she would return with the fresh sheets in a moment. She left through the only door leading in or out of the room. The closet in which the new sheets was stored was just down the hall. It wouldn't take her more than a minute to fetch the new sheets. When Carol returned to the room, Mike was nowhere to be seen. She assumed he must be using the restroom, so she changed the sheets and decided to leave. But Mike had still not returned from the restroom, so Carol knocked on the door and asked him if he was okay, to which she received no reply. So she announced that she was coming in and stepped into the restroom, which was not locked, and Mike wasn't inside. She became worried and asked the other nurses and staff members where Mike was, but no one knew anything about Mike. It was like he had dissipated into thin air Soon the whole hospital staff knew about his disappearance, and his family was informed too, since the cops and staff were looking for him. Unfortunately, we couldn't offer any help, so we returned home. However, Mike's story made it to the international news. Even when we were back home, we kept an eye on every update of the story, but Mike was never found. A month later, the hospital had its annual roof inspection scheduled. The roofing team always looked into the attic and the crawl spaces for any rodents or water damage. A roofer named Sam was working in the B wing of the hospital. When he got into the crawl space and flashed his head torch, he saw something huge about 50 meters away. In the beginning, Sam couldn't figure out what it was, so he went near, and what he saw shook him for a lifetime. Sitting in the crawl space, hunched over, was a dead body of a middle-aged man, and mice were eating his abdomen with his intestine hanging out of his body. Sam immediately alerted the authorities, and the body was removed from the crawl space by professionals. The man was none other than Mike, and the surgical cuts on his abdomen were not even healed. A big investigation was done as to how Mike got into the crawl space in his condition. The man couldn't walk without someone's help, let alone get into a crawl space. Not to mention, he had to get a stair, climb on it, remove the metal cover that covered the crawl space, and then get into it. The whole ordeal seemed impossible for an injured man to do without getting noticed by any staff member or patients. No one knows how Mike did it or why he did it. Some speculate that he may have decided to crawl into the crawl space, while some believe that he was murdered and put into the crawl space. But none of those two explanations make much sense, given his health condition and the fact that he was well loved by all. But there was a detective who consulted a scientist on this case, and he says that Mike's case is the best example of spontaneous teleportation, meaning a person is at some place at any given moment, and the next he is elsewhere, probably on a place he cannot get in such a small period. What do you think must have happened to Mike?
I'll be honest, I never believed in the paranormal. I always believed that paranormal videos were made by people pulling strings behind the camera, Photoshop or video editing. I always said I would believe in the paranormal if I saw something that convinced me. I never thought I would regret anything so much in my life. It all started when my daughter moved into my apartment. I had recently moved out as I had separated from my wife and she had taken the house. She was on vacation, so I was going to take care of Amy for 2 weeks. Amy and I had always been very close, and we were both looking forward to spending this time together. It was going to be a great 2 weeks with just the two of us together. I never imagined there would be 3 of us. The first 2 days, nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But on the 3rd day, Amy was behaving strangely. She was playing and talking to someone in her room. When I went over to ask her who she was talking to, she told me she was playing with Vincent. I never imagined her as the type of girl who would have an imaginary friend, but it's not something that bothered me. I let her keep playing. What's the worst that could happen? As the days went by, Amy became more and more distant from me. She didn't treat me badly or seem angry, but she was very distracted by her imaginary friend. She spent all day talking to Vincent, so much that I was starting to worry, and that worry would grow even more when it was time to eat. Amy asked me to put 3 plates on the table instead of 2, and I hesitantly agreed. She also asked me to cook something else, since Vincent didn't like macaroni and cheese, and that's when I decided to draw the line. I told Amy that Vincent had to eat what I had known. But just so I wouldn't be too cruel to her, I served her imaginary friend a plate of food. I went to get the drink from the fridge, but suddenly, a plate full of macaroni flew next to me, smashing into the wall next to the fridge. When I turned around, furious, I saw that Vincent's plate was gone. I got very angry with Amy, but she told me that she had nothing to do with what happened, that it was Vincent. Angry, she challenged her imaginary friend, which made me even angrier. Despite my anger, I decided not to say anything to her. I would have a talk with her, but since she had been with me so long ago, I preferred to be more permissive. The next day was Friday, and I had promised Amy that I would take her to the video games during the night. I went shopping for just a few minutes. She was taking a nap and could definitely take care of herself for a few minutes. When I came back, I couldn't believe what I saw. The kitchen was destroyed. All the dishes were destroyed. The chairs on the floor and the cutlery scattered everywhere. Furious, I yelled for the first time to Amy. She again told me it wasn't her fault. It was her imaginary friend. I was furious and sent her to bed without going to the games. She, between furious and sad, locked herself in her room to cry. Minutes later, I felt really bad about what I had done. I had never yelled at Amy like that, and I didn't want to start right now. I was thinking about going to her room and forgiving her. I was sure she had learned her lesson. Before going to her, I checked the security cameras in the kitchen. It's not that if I doubted the imaginary friend was true, I just wanted to show the footage to Amy so she would understand not to lie to me. What I didn't know was that she really wasn't lying to me. As I watched the footage, I didn't see Amy. The kitchen was destroying itself. It was as if something invisible was taking out my entire kitchen, destroying it bit by bit with indescribable force. I ran to the kitchen. I needed to see everything again. As I did, I realized that this could not have been Amy's doing. The chairs were broken, and some of the dishes from very high places were on the floor. There's no way Amy could have gotten there, not even by climbing on a chair. As I was going through everything, I found a strange photo on the floor, and I bent down to pick it up. In that photo was a terrifying 6-foot-tall man. Next to him, there was a frightened-looking woman, and in the middle, a little boy. A frightened little boy. Behind the photo, someone had written something by hand. Family photo, Alfonso, Maria, and Vincent. Could it be that child was Vincent? I went to Amy's room and showed her the photo without telling her my suspicions. But she just spoke.
Oh, you found Vincent's picture.
It was true. That boy was Vincent. This couldn't be true. There had to be a logical explanation. But that video, I had no way of denying that this was happening. Trying to understand a little more, I tried to get some information out of Amy, but I never would have expected her to tell me what she told me. Sweetie, what does your little friend want? What did he tell you?
No, but he just told me something.
Is he here with you right now?
Yes.
Hey, what's the matter? What did he say?
He said you ask a lot of questions. He said he wants to hurt you. He's saying a lot of bad words to you. He's very angry.
Tell your friend to calm down. I won't hurt him.
You should stop calling him little. I don't think he likes it. He's very, very tall.
Confused, I showed her the picture again and pointed to the child. Didn't you just say that this is Vincent? Startled, she grabbed my finger and wagged it up, pointing to the terrifying 6-foot man behind him.
No, this is Vincent.
My blood froze. Almost at the same time, I began to feel something behind me. It was air. It was a breath. Someone was breathing on the back of my neck.
Daddy, I'm scared.
All this time, the imaginary friend was real. But he wasn't a child, but a terrifying, nearly 6-foot-tall grown man. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew we had to escape from there. I ran to the door to get out of the kitchen. My daughter was standing behind him, but the door slammed in my face. Suddenly, all the stuff in the kitchen started flying at me, hurting me as I tried to force the door open. I pushed as hard as I could until I managed to break it. Amy was standing there, crying. I pulled her into my arms and ran as fast as I could. I reached the exit door, and as I reached for the key and opened the door, something behind us approached. It was like a distortion in the air that was slowly approaching us, breaking everything in its path. I managed to open the exit door and ran with my daughter. We went down the stairs without waiting for the elevator. All the lights behind us were going out. The light bulbs were breaking, and even though there was no one behind us, we heard violent and loud footsteps that were getting closer and closer. We opened the exit door and ran as fast as we could to my car. Behind us, at the apartment doors, I caught my first glimpse of a man standing in the doorway. The man had a terrifying smile and cruel red eyes. The rest of his face was sunk in a black shadow, and from one second to the next, he disappeared. That was the last time I went back to that apartment. I went to my ex-wife's house while she was on vacation and looked for a new place to move to. I hired several people to move everything out of that apartment. I never had an explanation for what was happening, but at least I had the video of what happened in the kitchen to prove that it was real. Unfortunately, no one ever believed me. With so many fake videos on the internet, I can't blame them either.